तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो न प्रचोदयात्। ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो न प्रचोदयात्।
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. 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 La ilaha illallah, Allah, Allah. La ilaha illallah, Allah, Allah. La ilaha illallah, Allah, Allah. Om Saishwaraya vidmahe Satyadevaya dhimahi Tanna sarva prachodayat. Om Saishwaraya vidmahe Satyadevaya dhimahi Tanna sarva prachodayat. Om Saishwaraya vidmahe Satyadevaya dhimahi Tanna sarva prachodayat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
जय 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 हे गजानना जय 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 हे गजानना गजानना हे गजवदना गजानना गजानना हे गजवदना जय 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 हे गजानना पार्वती नंदन गजानना पार्वती नंदन गजानना पशुपति तनया गजानना पशुपति तनया गजानना आदि पूज्य देव गजानना आदि पूज्य देव गजानना जय 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 हे गजानना गजानना हे गजवदना जय 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 हे गजानना पार्वती नंदन गजानना पशुपति तनया गजानना आदि पूज्य देव गजानना आदि पूज्य देव गजानना जय 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 हे गजानना
कोई बोले हरि हरि कोई बोले राम कोई बोले हरि हरि कोई बोले राम
कोई बोले हरि हरि कोई बोले राम
कोई बोले दुर्गा
सब है तेरो नाम।
बोल मन अल्लाह मालिक बोल मन साई राम।
बोल मन अल्लाह मालिक बोल मन साई राम।
बोल बोल मन अल्लाह मालिक बोल मन साई राम।
बोल बोल मन अल्लाह मालिक बोल मन साई राम।
बोल बोल हरि हरि
Remind me, my Lord, remind me, my Lord, who I am.
Remind me, my Lord, remind me, my Lord, remind me, my Lord, who I am.
Remind me, my Lord, remind me, my Lord, remind me, my Lord, who I am.
I am home, eternal Lord.
I am all, eternal Lord.
I am home, eternal Lord.
I am all, eternal Lord.
Through this life of distraction and of illusion, remind me, my Lord, who I am.
Through this life of distraction and of illusion, remind me, my Lord.
Through this life of distraction and of illusion, remind me, my Lord, who I am.
Through this life of distraction and of illusion, remind me, my Lord.
I am truth, I am peace, divine bliss.
I'm Jude, I'm peace, divine bliss.
I am truth, I am peace, divine bliss.
I'm Jude, I'm peace, divine bliss.
Swarupa, Hey Prema Swarupa, remind me, my Lord, who I am.
Ananda Swarupa, He Prema Swarupa, remind me, my Lord, who I am.
Ananda Swarupa, Hey Prema Swarupa, remind me, my Lord, who I am.
Ananda Swarupa, He Prema Swarupa, remind me, my Lord, who I
I am love, pure love.
am. I'm love, you are love.
ഗുരുവായൂർ ശ്രീ ഹരികൃഷ്ണ നാരായണ ഗോപാൽ
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 മുകുന്ദ മാധവ മുരളീ ലോല നാരായണ ഗോപാൽ
മാധവ മുരളീ यशु बुद्ध नानक
सौराष्ट्र महावीर तुम हो,
सौराष्ट्र महावीर तुम हो,
सौराष्ट्र महावीर तुम हो,
सौराष्ट्र महावीर तुम हो,
राम ही तुम हो, कृष्ण ही तुम हो,
कृष्ण भी तुम हो,
राम ही तुम हो, कृष्ण ही तुम हो,
तुम हो, कृष्ण भी तुम हो,
विश्वरूप तुम हो,
विश्वरूप तुम हो,
विश्वरूप तुम
tender touch.
Oh, Baba, sweet Baba, we love you so much.
Oh, Baba, sweet Baba, we love you so much.
We rejoice, we rejoice, we rejoice in your name.
Rejoice, we rejoice, we rejoice in your name.
We rejoice, we rejoice, we rejoice in your name.
We rejoice, we rejoice, we rejoice in your name.
Oh, Baba, sweet Baba, without you we are not.
Oh, Baba, sweet Baba, without you we are not.
Oh, Baba, sweet Baba, with you we are one.
Oh, Baba, sweet Baba, with you we are one.
We rejoice, we rejoice, we rejoice in your name.
We rejoice, we rejoice, we rejoice in your name.
We rejoice, we rejoice, we rejoice in your name.
We rejoice, we rejoice, we rejoice in your name.
In these times of trouble, we call out your name.
In these times of trouble, we call out your name.
When you embrace us, everything has changed.
When you embrace us, everything has changed.
We rejoice, we rejoice, we rejoice in your name.
Rejoice, we rejoice, we rejoice in your name.
We rejoice, we rejoice, we rejoice in your name.
We rejoice, we rejoice, we rejoice in your name.
Oh, Baba, sweet Baba, we need your tender touch.
Oh, Baba, sweet Baba, we need your tender touch.
Oh, Baba, sweet Baba, we love you so much.
Oh, Baba, sweet Baba, we love you so much.
We rejoice, we rejoice, we rejoice in your name.
We rejoice, we rejoice, we rejoice in your name.
We rejoice, we rejoice, we rejoice in your name.
गोविंद हरे गोपाल हरे
गोविंद हरे गोपाल हरे
गोविंद हरे गोपाल हरे
गोविंद हरे गोपाल हरे
गोविंद हरे
बिल्वाचन प्रिय भवानी शंकर नमः
ಶಿವಾಯ ನಮಃ ಶಿವಾಯ
भवानी जय जय दुर्गा अम्बा भवानी
दुर्गा अम्बा भवानी जय जय दुर्गा अम्बा भवानी
दुर्गा अम्बा भवानी जय जय दुर्गा अम्बा भवानी
दुर्गा अम्बा भवानी जय जय
प्रणव स्वरूपिणी माता जय जय
प्रणव स्वरूपिणी माता जय जय
दुर्गा अम्बा भवानी जय जय
दुर्गा अम्बा भवानी जय जय
दुर्गा अम्बा भवानी
दुर्गा अम्बा भवानी
दुर्गा अम्बा भवानी जय जय दुर्गा अम्बा भवानी
दुर्गा अम्बा भवानी जय जय दुर्गा अम्बा भवानी
मंगल करिणी संकट हरिणी
मंगल करिणी संकट हरिणी
प्रणव स्वरूपिणी माता जय जय
रूपिणी माता जय जय
दुर्गा अम्बा भवानी जय जय
दुर्गा अम्बा भवानी जय जय
दुर्गा अम्बा भवानी
दुर्गा अम्बा भवानी
दुर्गा अम्बा भवानी जय जय
दुर्गा शिव 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 शिरडिपुरीश्वर शंभो शंकर सांब शिवो शिव 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 शिरडिपुरीश्वर शंभो शंकर सांब शिवो शिव 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 शिरडिपुरीश्वर शंभो शंकर सांब शिवो शिव 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 शिरडिपुरीश्वर शंभो शंकर सांब शिवो भवहर पुरहर पुटपतीश्वर शंभो शंकर सदाशिवो 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 शिव 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 शिरडिपुरीश्वर शंभो शंकर सांब शिवो शिव 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 शिरडिपुरीश्वर शंभो शंकर सांब शिवो कैलासाचल बाल शिवा कालकूटधर बाल शिवा 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 लीलालस बाल शिवा लीला तांडव 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 बाल शिवा शिव 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 शिरडिपुरीश्वर शंभो शंकर सांब शिवो शिव 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 शिरडिपुरीश्वर शंभो शंकर सांब शिवो भवहर पुरहर पुटपतीश्वर शंभो शंकर सदाशिवो भवहर पुरहर पुटपतीश्वर शंभो शंकर सदाशिवो शिव 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 शिरडिपुरीश्वर शम्भो शङ्कर साम्ब शिवो
शिव 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 शिरडिपुरीश्वर शम्भो शङ्कर साम्ब शिवो
कैलासाचल बाल शिवा कालकूटधर बाल शिवा
कैलासाचल बाल शिवा कालकूटधर बाल शिवा
हे लीलालस बाल शिवा लीला ताण्डव बाल शिवा
लीलालस बाल शिवा लीला ताण्डव बाल शिवा
हे लीलालस बाल शिवा लीला ताण्डव बाल शिवा
लीलालस बाल शिवा लीला ताण्डव बाल शिवा
शिव 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 शिरडिपुरीश्वर
शम्भो शङ्कर साम्ब शिवो
जय विजयी भव जय विजयी भव
जय विजयी भव जय विजयी भव
जय विजयी भव जय विजयी भव
जय विजयी भव
भवभयनाश हनुमन्ता
भयनाश हनुमन्ता
भवभयनाश हनुमन्ता
भयनाश हनुमन्ता
पवन कुमार पावन वीरा
पवन कुमार पावन वीरा
पवन कुमार पावन वीरा
पवन कुमार पावन वीरा
अति बलवंता हनुमंता
अति बलवन्ता हनुमन्ता
जय अति बलवंता हनुमंता
अति बलवन्ता हनुमन्ता
अंजनी पुत्र वीरांजनेय
अंजनी पुत्र वीरांजनेय
अंजनी पुत्र वीरांजनेय
is past.
అది ఇంకా ఎన్ని కోట్లు పెట్టినా వాపసు రాదు.
You can never get back even
Forget
when
the
you go
past.
some place.
Forget the past.
Forget about it. Forget the past.
Future is not sure.
Future is not sure.
రేపు ఎల్లుండి అనుకోవటం ఎక్కడ అవుతుంది? రాత్రికి ఏమైపోతామో మనము. కాబట్టి ఫ్యూచర్ ఇస్ నాట్ షూర్.
You cannot think of
Do
tomorrow.
not go over for the future.
You don't worry about the future.
Live in the present.
Live in the present.
This is not ordinary present. This is omnipresent.
This is not ordinary present. This is omnipresent.
పాస్ట్ రిజల్ట్స్ ప్రెజెంట్ లో ఉంటుండాలి. ఫ్యూచర్ రిజల్ట్స్ ఉన్న ప్రెజెంట్ లో ఉంటుండాలి.
Past is in present. Future also is found in present.
పూర్వం ఏ విత్తనం వేశామో అది ఈనాడు మొక్కగా ఉంది.
Whatever seeds you have sown in the past,
ఈనాడు
they
ఏ
are
వృక్షం
bringing
ఉందో
fruits now.
భవిష్యత్తులో ఆ విత్తనమే వస్తుంది.
Whatever seed you sow now, you are going to get.
కనుక పాస్ట్ అండ్ ఫ్యూచర్ రెండింటిని కూడా ప్రెజెంట్ లో మనం అనుభవించాలి.
You should enjoy in the present both the past.
ప్రెజెంట్ లో కూడా మీరు పవిత్రంగా ఉంటుండండి. ఫ్యూచర్ కూడా పవిత్రంగానే ఉంటాయి.
Be pure and sacred in the present. Your future will be pure and sacred.
కానీ ఈనాడు ప్రెజెంట్ లోపల మనం దోసకాయ తిని ఫ్యూచర్ లోపల మామిడికాయ తీయపు రావాలంటే వస్తుందా? రానే రాదు.
Even today you eat a cucumber, you can't get the belch of a mango afterwards.
కనుక ఈనాడు ఏమి తిన్నామో ఫ్యూచర్ దగ్గర వస్తుంది.
Whatever you have eaten today,
హిందీలో కూడా చెప్తారు, దేశే అన్నీ ఐసే మాది.
in Hindi there is a saying,
ఎలాంటి ఫుడ్ అలాంటి హెల్తీగా వస్తుంది. కనుక మనము ప్రజెంట్ లోపల పవిత్రమైన హృదయంగా ఉంటుండాలి.
therefore in the present you must always have a pure heart and a pure thought.
Our collective gratitude to our beloved Bhagwan for this beautiful opportunity to be in his presence. Sairam, brothers and sisters. On behalf of all of us here, I'd like to offer our regional sadhana of living in the present with loving kindness at our beloved Swami's lotus feet. As you're walking into the devotion hall, you may have seen these flags on the way, right? That is the kindness path. So we have taken this sadhana for a month, and all the experiences that everybody had during the sadhana are written on those flags in the form of quotes. So please do take a minute to read them as you walk down this path. Welcome to our guest speakers, Brothers Christian Moevs and Brother Sunil Kasturi, for being here with us. If you heard them last night near the fireside chat, that was just a sneak peek of what is to come this weekend. It's going to be a very uplifting and very, very inspiring few days with them. As I was actually coming to the retreat on Wednesday morning, we were coming early to set up. I had a work call at 8:30 that I had to take, and it didn't go very well. There were a lot of challenges that were coming up, that were surfacing on one of our projects. And there was a lot of back and forth and unhappy people on the phone. So I started my day with that. And I had a lot of phone calls to take on my drive here. And all these conversations were about what we could have done to prevent this in the past, or what we could do in the future to rectify this. So there was this back and forth, past and future, past and future. And I was in this mindset I was coming here. And then suddenly I noticed that all the roads that I was taking had like 40 speed limit, 35 speed limit. And I got very frustrated. I was already upset, and I was very, very frustrated that, I was being slowed down, because I promised everybody that I'll be here at 11:30. And I didn't want to get delayed. So I was super upset. And then I thought my GPS, some settings were off. So I went back to look and see if I could change any setting to make sure I get here fast enough. And everything looked the same. My husband was actually, driving in a U-Haul with some retreat supplies. So I called him and said, "Hey, which route are you on?" He said, Route 80. And I said, I don't know, I'm going through all these like 15 and 297 and all these like local roads. I don't understand why. He said, it must be a setting. And I checked again, and it wasn't. Then I was like fighting with Swami, saying that, what is this, Swami? Day started bad, and then you're slowing me down like this. And then I stopped, and I just started looking around. And I saw 3 farms with beautiful cows grazing. Little further, I saw some deer. And then I saw turkeys. And I saw a couple of lakes on the way that I wouldn't have seen if I'd taken the highway. Swami was doing everything that he could to pull me into the present. Every little thing that I started noticing was just bringing me back, calming me down. And then I remembered during my childhood when me and my sister used to complain or fight or dwell on something past or worry about something in the future. My mom would always bring a toy, and she would say, look at this toy, to distract us, to bring us back into the present. So I just felt that Swami was doing that with the love of 1,000 mothers to bring me back into the present. What a blessing, right, to be here. And I pray to Swami to keep us all in this present, because this truly is his present for all of us. With that, I'd like to invite our first speaker, Brother Christian Moevs. He's a guest speaker, but he's also a home speaker. He grew up here in our region in New Jersey. He hosted several young adult meetings at his home. He first came to Swami in 1987, and his life completely changed. He made his first trip to Prashanti in 91, and then made 30 trips subsequently. He is a professor. He worked at the Notre Dame University for 27 years. He has an AB in philosophy from Harvard and a PhD from Columbia University. So he has many, many wonderful stories to share. And I also heard about another skill that he has, which is working miracles with cars. So without further ado, warm welcome to Brother Christian.
Sairam. Thank you so much for, that's good. Thank you so much for your love of Swami. It's food. It comes through in everything here, in the Bhajans, of course, but just the beauty and perfection all around, the immense work that everyone has done. A lot of you are Indian or of Indian heritage, and that moves me too. Thank you for that too, because I feel I owe an immense, immense debt to India. I have great love for India, Indian culture, Indian spirituality, Indian people. I mean, all you have to do is think that Swami could have been born wherever, right? He could have taken birth wherever. He chose India. That's an amazing fact. Today, it's sort of surprising for me because, as Aparna said, I was a professor, and so I taught, and I gave tons of lectures. I mean, that was my life. And I was meticulous. I would always prepare. I would prepare everything. I had like every word planned out, and then try to do it spontaneously, but it was all figured out. Swami didn't let me do that this time. First time in my life, I couldn't prepare. So I don't really know exactly what I'm going to say, but we'll see. If I get stuck, ask me a question or ask him. there is maybe a lesson already in that, right? Living in the present, not in the future, living in the present. If you're living in the present, you're living from the heart, not from the mind. And Swami's more interested in the heart than in the mind, and the now, the present now. And you know, if it's from the mind and not from the heart, it's always wrong, even if it's right. I was thinking, one of Swami's students told me an incident a few years ago, actually it's quite a few years ago now, but it's pure Swami. So, you know how for darshan, there was the students' gate, and all the students would crowd around the gate, and then they would open the gate, and there would be this mad scramble of all the students to get all the front seats on the veranda to sit near Baba. And so, you know, this would happen, and of course the bigger, older students, I mean, the students range from age 5 to 25, right? So the 25-year-olds and 20-year-olds, they're pretty big and fast, so they would get the first seats, and they'd make this block right near Swami, and then usually it was like they'd get smaller and smaller as you went back. So one day, Swami stops in front of the students up in the front, the older ones, and he says, see, you are big and strong and fast, and you run here and you take all the front seats, and all your younger brothers have to sit in the back. Right? And they felt awful. It's awful. So they started just walking in slowly when they opened the gate, and all the little ones ran up and sat in the front. And so that went on for a while. And then one day, Swami stops by the big guys in the back, and he says, all of you sitting back here, don't you love Swami? And it shows, you know, obviously you can't win with Swami, but when you think about it, what was the message again? It was follow the heart, live in the present. You know what you need to do. And maybe one day you do need to be in the front, another day you don't. But you know if you're following the heart inside. It's not a mental thing where I decide I'm going to do. So that's sort of one message about the heart takes precedence over the mind. It has to guide the mind. The other lesson that can come out of that is that there's only one teacher, and there's only one message. The teacher is him, and the message is love, and everything else is secondary. And I kind of started to learn that. I had an interview with Swami once where at one point in the interview, he asked me, what do you do? And I thought, oh, this is great because I'm a teacher, right? And Swami loves teachers. So I said, I teach Swami. And I was sort of proud of that. Swami was not impressed. He goes, teach. Like this. And it doesn't mean that Swami doesn't like teachers and doctors. They're great professions. But I had to think a lot about what that meant. You know, teach. He obviously wasn't impressed with my teaching, for one thing. But then it got clearer. I had two dreams, Baba dreams, that were connected with that. One was we were all in a lecture hall. Oh, God, I lived in lecture halls, right? With the tiers of seats going back and the raised platform up front. And so I was sort of in the middle of the hall, halfway back. And I'm sitting there, and I'm basically alone, actually. There's like no one else in this hall, but I'm sitting there. And there's an elderly pundit at a lectern up front. And he's going on and on and on and on, very erudite. It's just like words, I don't get a thing. I have no idea what he's saying. Like, everybody's bored. I don't know if there were other people there or not, but it was just like nothing was happening. And this was going on for a while. And then, all of a sudden, Swami came in. And it was unbelievable. It was like electric. It was a charge of love, of light, of intelligence, of life, so intense. And he came in with 2 dogs, and they were radiating all this love. They were jumping around. There's this incredible, I didn't know about the dogs. I learned later, those must have been Jack and Jill. Swami had 2 dogs for many years. And then at a certain point, Amachi, you know, the great other avatar, she comes out of Swami. She's just a part of Swami. She comes out of Swami like a small doll almost. And then she's radiating love. And there were no words, but it was like that was the message. So again, it seems like love is the message and Swami is the teacher. I had another dream some years later, which is also kind of connected, where I was alone. I was with Swami in his house. It was his house. But it was just us. There's no one else. And we were just sort of hanging out. But I had just finished taking a spiritual exam. I guess Swami must have given it to me. I had just finished taking the spiritual exam and had 4 questions. I couldn't answer any of them. I was like total wipeout. But it was weird. I didn't really care. It was like I was just gazing at Swami. And I kind of knew somehow I passed anyway, even though I failed. And I was just gazing at Swami. So I just didn't care. So then Swami says, I think you failed. And I didn't care. It was just like, I was just gazing at Swami. I just didn't care. And then Swami picks up the exam, and he looks at it, and he's like kind of surprised. He says, oh, you passed. He said, 78C. But I didn't care. I was just like gazing at Swami. And then I said, Swami, you are my world. You're my universe. You're the totality of what I love. You're everything. And Swami just said, I know. And he just held me. So, obviously, I'm not a good spiritual guy, but there is this love of Swami. There is this love of Swami. And in fact, I could say there are 2 facts in my life now that are sort of surprising to me. I became aware of them not that long ago. And they're probably true for you, too, for many of you. And if they're not true now, they will be true. They will be true. But the first fact is that I have never, I can never, I will never love anything as much as I love him. It's not possible. And the second fact is that nothing that could ever happen, that I could ever see, that I could ever learn, that I could ever hear, nothing could ever make me doubt that Satya Sai Baba is God. And those truths now feel to me like axiomatic. That's like I exist. But they weren't always true. Oh my, they were not always true. And it's quite a story of how they became true. And, of course, they don't mean that I haven't betrayed Baba. I have a PhD in betraying Baba. I mean, like, I'm really specialized. But, you know, that too, the forgiveness is always there, always there. Just keep running back. And the forgiveness is infinite. And it doesn't matter. No matter what we've done to Swami, the past is past. Forget the past. I think we just heard it. Those who love God have no past. They're dying to the past every minute. They accumulate nothing. It doesn't matter. Everything's forgiven. I think it's like, I had an image once that the way Swami sees us is the way we see kittens. And so you have this kitten, and it's helpless, and it's confused, and it makes a mess, and it gets in its bowl of milk, and it turns this over, and it falls off of that, and it can't do anything. It has no idea where it is. What are you going to do, punish the kitten? And that's the way Swami sees us. It was just his forms, and the love and compassion is infinite. We're trying. We're trying in our own little way, a little confused. And there's no direct path to God. It's all zigzags, and every zig and zag is essential. Doug says, it's all perfect. It has to be that way. That's the way it goes, and it makes you who you are. You know, I always used to compare myself to good devotees and Swami's students, and it's finally occurred to me, you know, if Swami wanted two of like Nagesh or some, you know, Swami saint, he would have made two of them, but he made one of them and a Christian, so you get what you get. The other truth now that comes out of that, an observation about this fact, is that the mind, the finite self, the ego, cannot love God, cannot love Swami, cannot recognize Swami, cannot know Swami. You know, this is really good news, because it means that our love for Swami is coming from him. It's only our deeper self, our true self, our infinite ocean self inside that recognizes Swami, knows Swami, loves Swami, follows Swami, despite the mind, whatever the mind goes. You know, if your faith is based on something you've seen or heard, something else you see or hear can undo your faith. That's not faith. That's why Baba says devotion is deep ocean, because it comes from very deep inside. It comes from himself. And the truth is that Swami is an external reflection of what we already are inside. And he has said that a million times, that you prayed, I came. We kind of created him in a weird way by our need to awaken. And what happens is that then that truth, God inside us, is pulling us in, and Swami outside is pushing us in from the outside, back to ourselves. And Swami has said that a million times. He says, I am you. You are I. That is the truth. The only difference is I know who I am. You have yet to find out. He said, I am you. I am yourself. I allow you to worship me to lead you to yourself. And, what does he tell us to say? I am God. I am not different from God. I am the indivisible, supreme, absolute. I am Sat Chitananda, being, awareness, bliss. Grief and anxiety can never affect me. Fear cannot ever enter me. I am ever content. I am Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram. I am Sat Chitananda. He says, you are the embodiment of God. Fill yourself with the thought of your almightiness, your majesty, and your glory. You have to be really pure, to actually experience that, to surrender to that truth. So Other good news in that, if we love Swami in a deep sense, the game's already over. Because it's Swami awakening to himself in us and recognizing and loving himself. And Swami ain't going to lose. He's not going to lose. So the game's already over. You know those great images that when the lion seizes its prey, you can wriggle, you can struggle, you can do whatever you want. Lion's not letting go. Or the mother tiger, you know, carrying her cub, she's like jumping over stuff. She's not going to drop the tiger. I like the image of the fishing line and the bait. You know, when you first, Swami casts out a line and you swallow his bait, and you don't even know you're on a fishing line for a while because he lets you run all over the place. But then eventually he starts really enjoying it, and that's when things get interesting. But the game's already over. It may take a while. And Swami says, you know, I hold your hand, but don't you let go with your hand. We have to do our part. As long as we think we're finite little critters, we have to constantly be doing our part. My favorite saying of Swami for many years was hold on to the world with your right hand and the world with your left. Don't let go with your right hand. And eventually your left will open its grip. Just don't let go with the right hand. So, to live in Swami, to live from the heart, to live in the self, in our deeper self, is to live in the present. And the image that I really like there is the ocean and waves. Because it's really true. What we are is an ocean. And it's a deep ocean of love, bliss, being, consciousness, infinity. And that is actually in us. On the surface of the ocean, there are the waves. They're way up there, and they're constantly changing. They just have a moment where a wave is a certain form, and that is the body, the mind, the emotion. It's the waves on the surface. The whole purpose of sadhana, of what we're about here, of what Swami is doing, is to try to get our attention back from that surface back into the ocean. We have to keep always a good part of our awareness, our focus in the ocean, inside, deep inside, not all on the surface. And that's what all sadhana is. That's what everything we're doing is about. Just let some of that go. And it has a lot to do with living in the present, because the mind on the surface only lives in the past and future. The mind is always projecting backwards with memory, accumulated stuff, and we keep accumulating it more and more, and we accumulate anger and sadness and bitterness and all that. And then we're always projecting to the future that that's where happiness is going to come, and that's where everything's going to be better, but we're worried about it, and so that's where all the anxiety and stress and hope, Swami is talking about, we live in the future. The truth is that the only time that anything exists is now. And if you think about it for a moment, the world only exists now. It doesn't exist in the past and future. The now, though, up on the surface, is a changing now. The ocean never changes, but the waves change. So it's a changing now, but they only exist in the now. Ancient Rome was a past now, but things were happening in the now, and the future is a future now. And we just know that there's a past and future because we have traces of the past. We can see dinosaurs, and then we have memory. So we have traces of the past, and from patterns we can, because things are changing, we imagine a future, but they don't exist. Aristotle had figured that out. The great philosopher 2,500 years ago. It's only now that things exist. So if you're not living in the now, you're not living. That's the truth. You're not actually living. You're completely blind to the actual now. But we do that all the time. We're constantly caught up in the mind. And this is a truth in every faith. You know, St. Bonaventure in the 13th century, great Christian saint, said, you know, it's amazing when God dwells in us that we're not aware of him inside us. And he says, but you know that reason is easy to find because the mind, distracted by cares, it's always thinking of past and future. It's distracted by senses, it's always running outside. It never looks inside. You know, the famous story about the gods hiding God, right? Where will the humans never find God? Inside the human. They'll never look in, they always look out. So we have to start looking in. And Swami's purpose, you know, what he's really after is to make us aware of what we already are. It's not something we have to attain. We have to let a lot go. If we're living in past and future, we're suffering. There's no real suffering in the present now because it's just a situation. And being present means that you're not bringing mind to it. So you're not judging things, you're not rejecting things, you're not attracted to things, you're not labeling things. It just is. It's perfect. It just is. It may not be the ideal situation, but if you're in the now, there's actually no suffering. It's the mind that creates suffering by its... Because what happens, Swami says there is no such thing as a finite self, a finite I. It doesn't exist. Mind does not actually exist. It's a projection. It's a projection from that ocean of intelligence and consciousness inside us. And Swami says mind is it's like a handkerchief. It's made of threads of thoughts and desires. You start pulling those out, there's nothing left. Nothing left. And the I thought is simply a projection of associating itself with a whole series of memories and hopes and desires. But none of it is actually real. Which is why the ego is always afraid. If we're living in the mind, we have a constant state of anxiety and tension because the ego knows that it's fragile. Anything can destroy it. The existence of another human being is a threat to it. It might take my place. It's that kind of thinking. That does not exist for our true self. And the ego is cut off from this ocean inside, so it just feels constantly frantic and insecure. There is immense, immense power in us, in consciousness, love, being, bliss in us. The ego and mind is all weakness and fear. I had actually some experiences of that. I lived in New York for many years. And if you live in New York long enough, you're probably going to get mugged sooner or later, right? But you can't actually get mugged if you're living in Swami. And I'll tell you what happened. I had two experiences. So the first one was, I had just gone to Baba meeting Thursday night, Manhattan Center, and it was over on 31st Street and 6th Avenue. And I lived on 34th and 10th. I was walking home after Bhajans. And I knew, of course, I should not walk down 31st Street because it's a deserted street, dark, I should go up to 34th and over. But I was in Swami bliss. I was saturated with Swami. And I knew on a deep level I couldn't be hurt. We shouldn't test God, etc. But I just walked down 31st Street. And it's pretty dark. And I'm going down the middle of the street, and I get to the middle of the block, and it's dark, and there's no one around. And all of a sudden, these 5 guys come out of the shadows, and they make a circle around me. And they're a little pushy in their manner. But they demanded my money, anything I had. And as it turned out, I actually wasn't carrying it. But the thing was, I was so saturated with Swami that I had no fear. I didn't react. The mind reacts, the emotions react. But if you're not living in that space, then there's love and you can act. You're free. There's no condition. So I was in that space. And so they demanded my money. So I showed them. I pulled out a pocket. I said, I'd give you, anything I have, but I'm sorry, I'm actually not carrying anything. I say, to the ringleader in front of me. And I'm gazing in his eyes, and then I had a Swami chain. It was gold chain with Baba's image on it and had been given to me on my first trip to India. It's kind of precious to me. And so he grabs that and he's holding that. And he says, then I'll just take this. And I didn't flinch. I just gazed in his eyes and I said, you could, but would that be fair? And that's the other secret. If you're living in the self, from the self, you never know what you're going to say because it's coming fresh from the source. It's not coming from patterns in your mind, but it's what needs to be said. He froze. His hand just froze. He was just staring into my eyes, and he just let go, and then they just went away. That's the power of the self, of being present now. I was right there. There was a human being, I was talking to this human being. It's also the power, you can think of a higher and lower nature. Obviously, this higher nature, the divine, is in every being. No one is bad. They can get really messed up on the surface, living in their heads. But if you are acting freely from your higher self, then you're addressing the higher self and the person in front of you, not their mind. It goes straight through their mind and it reaches their higher self. And I had another experience like that, another kind of failed mugging. So I just gotten paid, and I didn't get paid very much, and I did something I never do. I cashed my check, right? Which was like $230 for like 3 weeks or something. But anyways, all the money I had, and I had it all in my pocket in cash, and then I did something you should never do. I walked through what at that time was a very dangerous section of Central Park called the Ramble. And I was vaguely aware, I shouldn't be doing this. But again, I felt at home in the world, let's say. So I'm walking along, and a young man appears, and he has a firearm. And he, too, seems to want my money. And he's a little brusque about it, not the best manners. But this is again sort of amazing. So he demands my money, but I'm present at that moment, and what I felt from him was this intense unhappiness. That's all. I just was looking at him. Again, he wasn't looking at me, but I was looking at him. And so then I caught his eyes, and it came out. I just said, "Are you happy?" I said to him. It turned out he wasn't happy. He wasn't happy. He started crying. I don't think anyone had ever asked him that question. I don't think anybody ever cared whether he was happy or not. So we walked all the way across Central Park, and we became friends. And I gave him $10 when we got to Central Park West. And anyway, that's the power of the self. Eckhart Tolle wrote a book called The Power of Now, and a lot of my words and thinking about some of these issues come from him. It's a very good book. I mean, I'm not advertising books, but it was important to me. I read it a number of times. But he calls it the power of now. I would think of it as the power of self, of being present in the self. And we should keep 3/4 of our awareness, of our consciousness, always in the self, inside. You can feel it as the energy field of your body. Just constantly bring it back. Feel the life in your body, because the truth is that the reality is Satchitananda. It's being, awareness, bliss. That is the actual reality. It projects itself, it manifests itself as energy, and then mind, a finite consciousness, emotion, and body. But that's all like just the surface of it. Swami says the body is sugar cane and divinity is sugar. He says, extract the juice right from the body. You can only realize God in the body, which is why we have bodies. It's a very good thing to have bodies. Very good thing to be here. The reason for creation, I found that out once talking to Devyam, a saint up in Whitefield. She lives in Swami all the time. She never leaves, always in Swami. And she told me a great story. I went to see her one day, and Devyama says she was always in ecstasy, but she was really just radiant. She said, "Oh, Christian, I have to tell you, the most wonderful thing happened today. The most wonderful thing happened today. I have to tell you." She said, someone, because we were always going to see her, someone brought me a cappuccino. And so I had this cappuccino, and I was drinking the cappuccino out in the garden. And she said, and Shiva came. Oh, Christian. And he said, "Ma, could I have a sip?" He said, "Where I am, we don't have cappuccino." And she said, and Christian, and he took a sip. He took a sip. Oh, it was so wonderful. How do you think he took a sip? Through Devyama's lips, he was her. Right? He drank as her. That's the truth of what we are. And it's also the reason for creation. Why does this world exist? Cappuccino. Swami has a cappuccino stand in the ashram. It's proof that he's God. Because we're meant to play in the world. We're meant to rejoice in the world, to frolic in it, to be free. The key is to live on all levels at the same time. We are infinite powers of consciousness, being, and bliss. And we're also delightful little critters, otters, kittens. That's what we are. And that's fantastic. Saint Augustine, great Christian saint, said, humans are higher than angels. They are higher than angels because humans bridge all the possibilities of existence. Angels don't have bodies, so they're only consciousness and bliss. We are that, and we also experience and play in space and time. And we have a whole drama here. And it's a joyous drama if we're in the present, in Swami, now. It is suffering if we're in the mind, in the past, in the future. And Tolle mentioned, he says that there's no such thing as a problem. A problem is a creation of the mind. No such thing as a problem. It's the mind dwelling on stuff and creating a problem out of it and resisting it and therefore suffering. There are, Toller calls them, life situations. Yes, there's your life situation. And there may be things that need to change in your life situation or that you would like to change. But what you do is you bring yourself, your true self, with no resistance, no judgment. This is also Buddhist, meditation. Pure acceptance. Now. And then you don't react, you don't resist, so you can see clearly. And then you either see, okay, there's nothing I can do about this, you accept fully. Or, yes, this would be better if it were this way. This is what should be done. And then you act freely. But in that absolute instant, in the moment, there's no problem, no pain, no suffering, because it just is. And you bring love and acceptance to yourself. Kind of an extreme case. I don't know if some of you know a great friend, Alan Morlock. He was here last year. I met Alan. It was funny. It was my first trip to India. And I was going back to New Jersey, and I didn't know any devotees in New Jersey. And so I asked Swami, while I was at Darshan, just mentally, I said, Swami, could you send me someone? I need to have contacts in like Belmead, and where I live in New Jersey. So the next day, I'm sitting at Darshan, and there's this guy next to me, extraordinary guy. And so we look at it. He never talks, but we look at each other, and we start talking. He's from 2 miles from my house. Okay, so anyway, so I met Alan in India. But Alan's had quite a story. Alan loves God very deeply. He has a great phrase. He said that his life changed the day that Swami, he was in India. He said, Swami stepped off the veranda into my heart. He was just watching the ineffable beauty with which Swami just stepped off the veranda, and this is God, and just stepped into his heart and never left. Anyway, so Alan, he told me, a life experience of his from now a number of years ago, many years ago, but the life situation that he had wasn't great. His wife was at home dying of cancer, Jeanette, kind of advanced stages. They had no money, no health insurance. And Alan was doing tree work to earn a living. And so he was out late. This is the era before cell phones, before all communications. He was working late. He was in a totally isolated area. He had gone like a half mile back on this dirt road, and he was doing some work on trees out in a field, like, behind farms and stuff. There's no one around. It's dusk. No cell phones, and he's working, and he falls out of a tree and lands and breaks his back. So at that point, he's paralyzed. At that moment, he can't move. His wife is home dying of cancer. He has no money. He just seems to have broken his back. You think this would be kind of a bad situation. But Alan, being Alan, he says, the thought comes to him, what at this moment is lacking? Nothing. Nothing. Perfect. And he goes into samadhi. He goes into totally absorbed into Swami. So, and this is another truth. This is what happens when you're fully surrendered like that, fully present. You can draw on this infinite power of consciousness. It comes into action. You're connected with everything that exists. It's not just a little finite self. So what happens? He's in that state. All of a sudden, these 2 little headlights start coming up the lane. Somebody's coming up the lane, comes all the way up, right? It's a pizza delivery guy, and he's totally lost. And that saved Alan. But again, everything was perfect. The power, all creativity, all intelligence, all solution of problems, it comes from this deeper self. It doesn't come from the mind. Everything, every great invention, every great piece of art, it all comes from the self. We have to be in touch with it. Sometimes we get, when artists focus, and then all of a sudden their mind is still and that power can come through. They asked Ludwig Wittgenstein, he's the greatest philosopher of the 20th century. They asked Ludwig Wittgenstein, he was also a great mystic in his own way too, but they asked Ludwig Wittgenstein once, what's it like to be a genius? Kind of a stupid question, but he always took every question seriously, so he thought about it. And his answer was, I would tell my students this all the time. Wittgenstein said, I think there is as much light in one human being as another, meaning light of intelligence. I think there's as much intelligence, light, in one human being as another. He says, what you call a genius possesses a lens to focus that light into a burning point. That's what it is. That's meditation. The mind is just the waves up here, this, and it's divided into 1,000 little streams. It's an ocean that gets divided into 1,000 little streams up here. All our little thoughts, desires, sense impressions, all that stuff, and each of them is very weak, can't do much. What meditation does is to rechannel all of that into one river, into one ocean, and then there's power. I had a friend at Notre Dame. I could go on for, it's funny. Okay, thank you. It's funny, I told you I wasn't able to prepare for this talk, but Swami did let me take notes on an index cards. I ended up with 400 cards. Like, what are you going to do with that, right? So I had a friend at Notre Dame. She was a mathematician. She was visiting just for a year. She was Italian, so we were connected there. So I met her right away when she came, but we had a very deep connection because she was amazing. She had a spiritual life of an intensity like I have never seen. She lived constantly aware of God and in God's presence. And the way she fostered that was that she would take massive amounts of time to sit in Eucharistic adoration. It's a Catholic practice that the host, the bread, is actually the body of Christ, and it's kept in the tabernacle behind the altar. But that is actually Christ's body. For her, that was real. She would spend, in the morning, 4 hours in Eucharistic adoration, just focused on the Eucharist and experiencing it in herself. And she always said, oh, I was with him. She would always just say him. The way I say him for Swami, yeah, I was con lui, him, Christ. It was fantastic. So we were just, and lovers of God kind of recognize each other. And, satsang, yeah. You have to have satsang. Coals go out if they're not in the fire, right? So anyway, she was telling me, it was pretty funny. So you think, she doesn't have a lot of time to do her work, right? She does 4 hours of meditation in the morning. She does 4 to 6 hours at night. She's often up all night, just lost in God. So she has a few hours in the afternoon where she's actually doing mathematics. And she was prodigious. So the reason she was at Notre Dame was that there was a professor there working on this important problem in mathematics, and he'd been working on it for like 20, 25 years. And she got interested in this problem, and he, of course, found out about that, so he invited her to Notre Dame for a year, to come, and I met her when she just arrived. She solved the problem in 2 weeks. She said, I was with him, and then I was coming out, and all of a sudden I saw it. Yeah, I saw the solution. It just came to her. But that's what happens when you access this deeper self. Sai Baba says that Sai Baba means see always inside, being, awareness, bliss, Atma. See always inside, being, awareness, bliss, Atma. And it's the truth of our nature. All the rest is just a projection. It's a mirage. It doesn't have any real existence. So how do we live in this ocean? How do we keep the mind home? Well, Swami has told, there are the 3 basic paths. We all know that. It's devotion and wisdom and basically seva. It's bhakti jnana and karma yoga. Devotion is loving God so intensely that you lose yourself in Him. You're losing yourself in yourself because He's just reflecting you outside. And devotion is essential because you need love to fuel all the rest. You can't do it without accessing this power of love. And it has to become a burning, passionate love. Cry. Cry for God. 10 minutes of crying is worth 3 days of meditation. I know from experience. I can probably say I've cried more for Him than I've cried for anything in my life, including when I was a baby. And I've never, in 30 years, I haven't cried for anything else. Only Swami. So devotion, and St. Paul says you're turned into the image you adore. And so devotion obviously is key. The path of wisdom is essential. It's self-inquiry. Swami says it's 3/4 of spiritual life is self-inquiry. And it's basically the who am I? Who am I? And it really, really helps every other form of sadhana that we do if that question is always there. And it's a question that you're not asking mentally. It's a way of focusing the mind on its source. Who am I? I. And you focus on that I thought. Where does it arise? How does it arise? What is it? And that instantly eliminates all other thoughts, because the I thought is the first thought. You can't have another thought without it. And you focus on that I thought and you try to find it, and it's not there. All that's there is Sat Chit Ananda, being, awareness, bliss. There is no such thing as a finite I. A very powerful trick to play on the mind is we like to think, I'm not self-realized. Find out who is not self-realized. There is no such entity. Doesn't exist. Complete fiction. It's a fabrication of the mind. There is no such entity. So you ask, okay, I am not self-realized. Okay, who is not self-realized? Well, I'm not. Well, who am I? And you start following that back, and you try to find that I thought. Ramakrishna Paramahansa once said, like, I've tried so hard to find the I thought, I've never been able to find it. It doesn't exist. It just dissolves the minute you seek it. But that's the key. You keep going back home. So you do that when you're singing bhajans, namasmarana. Have that question always in your mind. Who am I? And all of a sudden, when you're singing bhajans, you will experience, I'm singing my own name. Rama is my name. Krishna is my name. Sri Satya Sai Baba is my name. We don't dare to believe that. The mind clings. But it's all letting go. The fundamental thing, you're coming back from I am this or that to I am. I am this or that as the waves up here. I am as the ocean. They have no being apart from this. They're just an expression of what you are. It's not what you are, it's an expression of what you are. And my favorite of all Swami quotes is, it's the entirety of spiritual life, be willing to be nothing. Be willing to be nothing. Nothing is everything. When you surrender, the great theologian Dennis Turner, he's a great Catholic theologian friend now. He came to Notre Dame many times, but he gave a great lecture at the University of Chicago. And he said, you start to awaken to the truth when you begin to understand that if there were nothing, nothing would be missing. Because everything, the whole world, is simply an expression of what is. And it's not going anywhere. It doesn't add anything to God. It's just an expression. How much time do I have? Just a few minutes? 5? Okay, yeah. Geez, I could tell you so many stories. What should I tell you? An image comes to me that's useful. And this is, I'm talking about Christian and Catholic saints. Well, I taught at Notre Dame, right? But Saint Teresa of Avila, she lived in the 1500s. One of the greatest, she's a doctor of the Catholic Church, and one of the greatest of saints. She lived in constant divine bliss for the last 30 years of her life, just uninterrupted ecstasy. But it wasn't always that way. It wasn't always that way. And she wrote a wonderful thing. I found it very helpful. I would tell my Balvika students. She said she actually hated prayer when she started out. She joined a convent, right? She had to pray. And prayer wasn't just talking to God. It was contemplative prayer, meaning what we would call meditation. It's going deep within, losing yourself in Eucharistic adoration, that kind of thing. The deep union prayer. But she said, it's very hard work. And she didn't like it, and it wasn't going very well, for years. But it changes. You don't stop, right? You don't stop. And her image was, she says, it's like watering your garden. It's like watering your garden, your inner garden. And so at the beginning, it's really hard work. And you've got to walk over to the well with this bucket. And then you got to lower the bucket into the well. And then you got to haul the bucket out, full of water. And then you take it and then you got to carry it and you got to plunk it, and then you got to go get more water. That's what prayer meditation is like at the beginning, right? As you keep doing it. And then all of a sudden, you seem to have a little machine. It's like a crank. And all you have to do is just start cranking, and the water starts flowing into your garden. And then you keep doing it, and she says, eventually it's different. It's like you've constructed a little canal from the river into your garden. You don't really have to do much. It's constantly coming in. Right? And she said, and then, it always happens too, that you don't have to do any watering at all because there's a huge downpour. But that's what sadhana's like. And it gets easier and easier as you let more and more go. And as the love grows. It's basically like blowing the rust and dust off the soul. The soul is Swami. Swami's out there. You blow some of that dust off. That power of attraction is so intense that nothing can resist it. It's more powerful. The love between a devotee and God is more powerful than anything that exists. God, I could tell you so many stories about that. What should I say now? Because we're just about out of time. I can leave you with the last image, and this comes from another saint named Peace Pilgrim. She was also important to me. Baba would send me various sources. And she talks about what spiritual life, the sort of the path by which it unfolds. And she says, no, this is my path. She says, but it's pretty standard. It's kind of how it goes. And I found it a useful sort of way of thinking about it. And she would actually draw this on the board. But basically, the way it starts out is that we're totally identified with the little self, the ego, the mind, and the emotions, and the body. And that's pretty selfish, right? It's all self-centered. And then your days are total ups and downs because someone says something nice about you and you're happy. Someone says something bad about you and you're miserable. It's all ups and downs. It's just that the self-centered nature, she would call that our sort of lower self-centered nature. It's a big zigzag, it just sort of zigzags like that with all these ups and downs. And it's kind of a rut. Nothing ever changes. She says, until there's the first point of no return. It's a point of no return when you're tired of all that suffering and all that meaninglessness, and you determine that you want to give yourself to some higher purpose. God, it can be whatever form that higher purpose takes for you, but you're not going to live for yourself anymore. All of a sudden, you're starting to try to live for your higher self. That's the God within, the self. And she said, then the zigzag's different, because then now you're at a sort of higher level, but it's a big battle between that higher selfless giving nature and that old self-centered nature that keeps coming back. But you can't go back to the way it was before. Now it's a battle between the divine in you and the little mind. And that goes on for a while. And quite a bit of drama. Boy, I could tell you stories about the drama I had, what Swami did with me. But then she says, what you keep at it, and you get your first peak experience, is what she would call it. And that's your first experience of what she was called inner peace, which is divine union, when you first all of a sudden are completely taken over by Swami, by that infinity in us. Now, once you've experienced that, you cannot continue living if you don't constantly come back to it. And so you fall out right away, and you do dips out of it, but then you have longer and longer plateaus until finally you always feel Swami there. It's always there. It couldn't possibly, it's yourself. How could it go anywhere? And you're always in touch with it. And then she says there's another point of no return when you realize that battle's over and that you can never, ever be out of consciousness of Swami. She says the higher nature. And she says then it's just an unfolding and a growth in love and joy. But I have so many stories to tell you. I've told you a few, but maybe we can talk more. Sairam, thank you so much.
Sairam, everyone. Another round of applause for our dear brother Christian, our professor. Thank you, Brother Christian. You've really, really moved us with your thoughts and reflections today. You reminded us about the totality of our dearest Swami. And through your personal experiences, you have reinstated that there's no suffering in the present, and there is infinite and immense power of the self in the present. Losing ourselves in devotion with the power of love is huge. It's important. And so much, much more, right? You can't do justice to your lecture on the mind with just 15 minutes. So we need to ask the regional team to find more time for us and have you come back to talk to us about the mind more in depth and educate us. You are indeed the professor. Thank you. The simple exercise of giving the vote of thanks was my lesson of living in the present. I realized that it's not easy. I want to listen to him. I want to make sure I'm taking notes. And I just got lost. So maybe we should attend the workshops that follow this session, so learn a little bit more. I definitely need to attend them all. But it's not easy. It's really not easy, especially today, I think, with this in our hands and multitasking and all of that, it's not easy to just accept the present. So let's gain some knowledge this weekend and benefit from living through the present. I have some announcement from our organizers. Give me a moment. We have 3 workshops starting at 11 a.m. Workshop on seeing God in everyone, everywhere, all the time is right here in the devotion hall. Workshop on faith, a conscious act of living. It's in the arts and crafts building. By the way, the camp maps are posted here. The workshop on the power of thoughts, word, and action in the registration building. After the workshops, we have lunch. But after lunch, we have tree planting, so got to work that lunch a little bit. So we're going to gather up for a brief orientation in the dining hall on the men's side before we head off to the planting side. If anyone needs a ride leaving the retreat or is able to give the ride, please let the service desk know. We can all benefit from each other's seva. If you'd like to volunteer in any activity, also check with the service desk. And if you signed up for any seva and you don't remember, like me, check with the service desk. All the retreat attendees will be taking a group picture in front of the devotion hall at about 4:45. Please arrive on time. It'll be a special moment for all of us to gather together and treasure this memory with a picture. Anyone who wants to leave the campsite and like to make use of external transportation, please register their departure time at the service desk. For all further questions, see Aparna who's sitting there. Once again, Brother Christian, thank you very, very much, and we look forward to hearing and learning more from you. Sai Ram.